Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this video, I'm going to address the misuse of the Fatawas and the texts of the scholars, and the ignorance and the confusion of the Khawarij in understanding certain terms used by the Ulamah, like Tabdeel, Istihlal, legislation, ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, and so on. We will see how the Ulama define these terms. We will see in what places are these specific matters considered to be Kufr. We will also see what the scholars said specifically about the individual rulers. Rather than taking general fatwas outside their place to make specific ahkam on people and giving rulings on people, we will see what ruling did they give on those people when they were asked about them. We're not going to mix up words and fatwas and twist their intent of the scholars. This all comes from ignorance, the way of the Khawarij. The way they quote the scholars on the topic of Takfir is similar to a liberal or any of these misguided, self-proclaimed, forward-thinking groups. It is as if one of them were to compile a 4-hour video on scholars talking about the virtues of marriage to prove what? To prove that what the people of Lut did is permissible, what the men used to do in the time of Lut, that it's halal. It is two separate issues, completely different. And an ignorant person cannot distinguish between these evidences. And you will see, when the scholars are asked about takfiring the rulers, you never see them making takfir, but instead they rebuked it, and they warned against it, and even affirmed Islam, like how Ahmed Shakir, مثلا, he said the Egyptian ruler is Muslim, and he didn't rule by 100% Shariah, but he affirmed Islam for the Egyptian ruler. And our agreement with all these revivers of Islam, I could make this video very extensive, but I specifically chose the major Ai*Imah of this time in this video. Our agreement with all these revivers of Islam in this time is evidence that our beliefs and understanding of their works aligns with theirs. It affirms we understand the Ulama, the Jama'ah of this time, the Imams of this era, the terms they used and what they intended in their Fatawas. They all agreed in not takfiring most of the non-Shia rulers, despite not having perfect Shariah. And this is an agreement with Ahl Sunnah as opposed to the Khawarij, like Ahmed Musa Jibril and al-Alwan and their followers who unrestrictedly takfir all the rulers. So it's very clear that we are truly with the Ulama, and the Khawarij do not have Ulama, and they're cursed with ignorance. And do not be surprised about them misquoting the scholars. This is an old tactic of the Khawarij since the time of the Sahabah. They used to use Aisha radiyallahu anha to takfir Uthman radiyallahu anhu. They were both the same. They were both the Jama'ah. They were Ahl Sunnah, and they loved each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet they used them against each other. And Aisha radiyallahu anha did not hold the stance. And it's the same with Al-Hasan al-Basri. The Khawarij used Al-Hasan al-Basri to misguide Ahl Sunnah and so on. And this is the tactic of the Khawarij. Their misunderstanding of the terms used by the ulama and what they classified to be kufr has caused them to, their misunderstanding of what the scholars classified to be kufr has caused them to takfir Muslims for their sins. Calling a sin, they'd end up calling a sin shirk, or they'll call a sin tabdeel and istihlal. As Ahmed Musa Jibril said, all the rulers today did tabdeel and istihlal. They did istihlal. He claims to be a caller to tawheed and he doesn't know the meaning of istihlal. Ibn Abbas, he says, it is only kufr if they did istihlal. Ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in man-made laws is only kufr if they did istihlal. Because istihlal is different from ruling. It's a completely different issue. He doesn't know the meaning of halal and haram and making something halal. So understand that there's ijma' that tabdeel and istihlal is shirk. But there is ijma' that ruling by man-made laws over a land is a sin and not shirk, and making takfir for this makes you from the Khawarij. There are many ulama who said this, multiple in their tafsir, and you'll see, and I'll quote them later in this video, inshallah. Contemporary scholars as well, not in the previous ones. So whoever confuses ruling by man-made laws over a country, they confuse it with istihlal and called it a sin, called this sin a shirk, has followed the Khawarij. In Ibn Qudama, in al-Mughni, al-Nawawi, in Rawdat al-Talibin, al-Zarkashi, al-Hanbali, in Mukhtasar al-Kharaqi, Ibn Taymiyah, Majmu' al-Fatawa, many ulama, they mention that takfir based on false ta'wil makes someone from the Khawarij. And Ibn Taymiyah wrote a lot about this and made a lot of deep, wrote a lot of detail. And the Khawarij, they takfir even for something mubah or not even haram. It may be even halal, and they might takfir them, or something maybe even obligatory. They'll make takfir on them by ta'wil, so misunderstanding. For example, the rulers may trade with the US, and they're going to label it to be shirk and allying with the disbelievers against the Muslims. This is ta'wil, and they're making takfir based on a ta'wil, and this is the methodology of the Khawarij. And that is why, so whenever an alim mentions something to be ruling by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or something similar to this topic to be shirk, they're referring to those who believe they're a musharri' with Allah. What they say is the religion, and you will be punished in the next life for disobeying. So this is why they're called a taghut, because they made themselves into a lord by believing what they say is like Allah's, and all those who believe him as well are disbelievers. And this is the proper way of applying the word taghut. The reason he's called a taghut for ruling by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed is because he believes he is like Allah in making rules and making their own religion. They may make their own religion by believing it's better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, or believe that what they say is also part of the deen, and so on. And again, we Ahlus Sunnah know that our understanding of the scholars' statements is correct, because our agreement, or due to the scholars agreeing with us and still affirming Islam for the Sunni rulers and rebuking those who use their Fatawas to takfir the rulers, they rebuke them. This is evidence. We are correct in understanding them for having the same conclusion with them to not takfir the rulers. And we are with them, and the Khawarij are against them. And you will see all the references for my claims in this video. So pay attention to the speech of the Imams of our time following this introduction.
إذا كان الخلاف في هذه القضية مثلا أنهم يكفرون الحكام ويقولون بأن يوجد جهاد مثلا في الجزائر ويسمعون أسفة سلمان وسفر الحوالي، هل هذا الخلاف الشيخ خلاف فرعي أم هو خلاف في الأصول الشيخ؟
هذا خلاف عقدي.
نعم.
لأن من أصول أهل السنة والجماعة أن لا يكفر أحد بذنب.
هذا الشيخ علما أنهم لا يكفرون صاحب الكبيرة وكذا، ولكن إلا الحكام يقولون ويأتون بالآية ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله فأولئك هم الكافرون، يكفرون الحكام فقط.
هذه الآية فيها آثر عن ابن عباس أن المراد الكفر الذي لا يخرج من الملة، كما في قول الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم سباب المسلم فسوق وقتاله كفر. وفي رأي بعض المفسرين أنها نزلت في أهل الكتاب لأن السياق في ذلك.
التكفير لا نستطيع أن نكفر مثل من نعرفه الذي أعرفه الآن. ما نستطيع أن نكفر مثل يعني رئيس اليمن، ملك السعودية، رئيس السودان، الرئيس المصري، كهؤلاء ما نستطيع أن نكفرهم.
لا إله إلا الله كم أبقى في خصام مع الذين يكفرون الحكومة السعودية، وأنا أقول إنها ليست بكافرة.
قضية المولد هل هي أهم من قضية تحكيم القوانين الذي هي كفر والذي هو معمول به في كثير من البلاد الإسلامية؟ ما رأي سماحتكم في ذلك؟
تحكيم القوانين منكر أيضا وكفر أكبر يستحله أحد حكم الأوضاع والتقاليد التي وضعها الرجال واستحل ذلك فقد كفر، وإذا فعله من الاستحلال فقد أتى منكرا عظيما ونوعا من الكفر الأصغر والظلم الأصغر.
فضيلة الشيخ، ما نصيحتكم للشباب الذين يكفرون حكام هذه البلاد ويطعنون في أمانة علمائها؟
هؤلاء شباب طائشون، عليهم أن يتعلموا أولا، يطلبوا العلم، فإذا تعلموا عرفوا الحق. التكفير ما هو أمر سهل، تكفير والعياذ بالله، الحكم على مسلم بالكفر هذا أمر خطير. من قال لصاحبه يا كافر، لأخيه يا كافر أو يا فاسق أو يا عدو الله وهو ليس كذلك، رجع كلامه عليه. فعلى هؤلاء الشباب أنصح لهم بأن يتعلموا أولا ولا يستعجلوا في الأمور حتى يعرفوا الحق من الباطل ويعرفوا ضوابط التكفير.
قد قال لنا أحد الدكاترة إن الهجرة قد انقطعت في هذا الزمان لأنها لا توجد دولة إسلامية على وجه الأرض، فهل قوله صحيح؟
هذا على مذهب التكفيريين اللي يكفرون الناس عموما، وهذا يقول لا يوجد دولة إسلامية على وجه الأرض، هذا تكفير بالعموم والعياذ بالله، هذا كلام باطل.
جماعة يا شيخ الكويت تكفر الحكام وتثير الفتن فيما بينهم،
هذا خطأ أيضا، هذا خطأ والله المستعان. هذا يأتي من الجهل بالإسلام والتسرع والاستعجال في فهم الإسلام أولا، وهذا سيكون فهما خطأ، ثم الاستعجال في تطبيق الأحكام الإسلامية قبل التمكن من تطبيقها.
مثلا يا شيخ تكفير التشريع العام والتكفير العيني، هذه المسائل يا شيخ قد يأخذون الفتوى منكم ثم يطبقونها على الحاكم هكذا تطبيقا يعني
غير صحيح.
نعم. ثم لما تقول له يا أخي هذه ما قالها الشيخ ابن عثيمين، يقول لك لكن الشيخ ابن عثيمين مثلا في كتبه قال أن مثلا التشريع العام من حكم بغير ما أنزل فهو كافر دون تفصيل، والآن عندنا هذا الحاكم لا يحكم بما أنزل الله فهو كافر. فهمت المسألة يا شيخ؟ نعم. يعني فما نصيحتكم لهؤلاء لأنهم تشبثوا بهذه الفتوى؟
أقول بارك الله فيكم. نعم. الحكم على المسألة بالحكم الذي ينطبق عليها، غير الحكم على شخص معين. فما رأيك في من يقول اللهم أنت عبدي وأنا ربك؟ كافر؟ ولما أخطأ من شدة الفرح؟
لا ليس بكافر.
صار ليس بكافر، مع أنه كلمة كفر. وما رأيك بالذي قال لأهله إذا مت فأحرقوني ثم ذروني في اليم فإن الله لو قدر علي لعذبني عذابا لا يعذب أحد من العالمين؟ كافر ولا كافر؟ كافر شاك بقدر الله. لكن الرجل من مخافة الله تأول. فالمهم أنه يجب على طلبة العلم أن يعرفوا الفرق بين الحكم على في المسألة من حيث هو حكم على المسألة من حيث هي مسألة، ثم ينظر في طبيعة الحاكم، لأن الحاكم المعين قد يكون عنده من علماء السوء من يلبس عليه الأمور، وغالب حكام المسلمين اليوم ليس عندهم علم في الشرع، فيأتيهم فلان ويموه عليه وفلان يموه عليه. ألم ترى إلى أن بعض علماء المسلمين المعتبرين قال جميع مسائل الحياة ليس للشرع فيها تدخل، وشبهوا أو اشتبه عليهم الأمر بقوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم أنتم أعلم بأمور دنياكم، ليس بأحكام دنياكم، بأمور دنياكم. فالناس يلبسون الآن. ألم تروا أن بعض العلماء في بلاد ما أباحوا الربا الاستثماري وقال المحرم الربا الاستغلالي، وشبه بقوله تعالى فلكم رؤوس أموالكم لا تظلمون.
What Ibn al-Uthaymin said is very important and you must contemplate over it. Firstly, he says that do not confuse general issues with specific ahkam, meaning when a scholar talks about general issues, you cannot just take that and use it to make takfir on individuals. As Abdul Latif bin Abdul Rahman bin Hassan al-Najdi, one of the Najdi A'imah, he said, making takfir on people for things like ruling by other than what Allah revealed, or being allied with the kuffar, or sending them gifts, and so on, making takfir on them over these issues is for the scholars, and it is not for the general public to do. This is for the scholars, and this is mentioned by the Najdiyah themselves. And the second thing he mentioned is ta'wil. He mentioned that the scholars do, or the rulers, they do ta'wil. And they're manipulated by misguided scholars, some of them. They're manipulated by scholars to believe that whatever rules they make in this dunya over the public is a dunyawi issue, and you are more knowledgeable in your dunyawi affairs, as the Prophet ﷺ said, which they manipulated this hadith. So they make ta'wil, and most of the rulers are ignorant and they don't know the meaning of this hadith. So they rule over their countries and they make certain things allowed which they shouldn't. And they may not rule by perfect Shariah, but it is based off ta'wil. So this becomes a mani', which means something that prevents you from making takfir. And this shows the biasness and the double standards of the Khawarij. Because if you ask them, why didn't Imam Ahmed make takfir on al-Wathiq or al-Mu'tasim, who were rulers who did not rule by the Sharia? Ibn Taymiyyah, he mentioned al-Mu'tasim. He used to force the people to say the Quran is makhluq. He would not defend Ahlus Sunnah from the kuffar. He would judge the Muslims who followed the Messenger ﷺ's aqidah as disbelievers. And in the courts, they would judge them this way. They did not rule by the Sharia. This is not the Sharia. But the Khawarij, the excuse they bring is they did ta'wil. So when it comes to Imam Ahmed, why he did not make takfir, they'll say it's ta'wil. But when it comes to today's rulers who are better than this, they call them kuffar, and they don't have any mani'. They don't bring mawani'. The mawani' are out of the question. And when you look at other imam like Abdul Aziz al-Kanani, he didn't even make takfir on al-Ma'mun, which even Imam Ahmed, I believe, at one point made takfir on him. And the Imam came to Imam Ahmed and they asked about these rulers. They say that the Quran is makhluq, and they spread this and they force it upon the people. When the fuqaha came to Imam Ahmed and they asked him about this, he said, do not bring down your hands from obedience. And he said, hate what they do in your hearts. And he told them to have sabr, patience, and to hear and obey. So does Imam Ahmed's da'wah and how he dealt with the rulers, does it resemble Ahl Sunnah or the Khawarij more, the Khawarij of today? And another issue is that when they quote the ulama, they take something out of its context. And for an example, Tabdeel, the word Tabdeel or Tashri' in these issues, its meaning is Istihlal, which means to say this is halal in Islam. Khamr is halal in Islam and you're allowed to drink khamr. And if I drink it, there's no sin on me and I won't be punished in the akhirah. This is Istihlal, Tabdeel and Tashri'. And Tashri' sometimes it could mean this, sometimes it could mean ruling in the dunya. Ibn Taymiyah, he said Tabdeel is to make Istihlal and to lie about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. He gave the example saying that eating meat that is dead meat, which is corpse, or it means it was not slaughtered properly. This meat is halal. It's like saying something like this and saying this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in His Messenger. This is Tabdeel. So it's to change the Sharia, it's to change what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down, not ruling over the people. It's a completely different matter. So when they take what the scholars said about Tabdeel, they misuse these statements. And even Ibn Abbas, when he asked about ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, he said, هَذَا فِيهِ تَفْصِيل. Very important. Because basically, ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, it is kufr. But there's a tafsil, which means there's an explanation. There's certain places where it's kufr. And he mentioned 3 places. When the person makes it halal to the rule by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, when the person makes his rule better than Allah, or he makes it equal to. So this is where ruling by what other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed would be kufr. So these statements by Imam Ibn Taymiyah rahimahullah and Shaykh Ibn Baz rahimahullah make it clear when it sounds like the ulama are trying to say that ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed is kufr akbar and tabdeel is kufr akbar without any niza' or khilaf. They're referring to istihlal, and this is obvious from the kalam of these 2 scholars. These Khawarij are well known for changing what the scholars were trying to say. For an example, al-Alwan, the Takfiri, in his Nawaqid al-Islam, he says under ayah about ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed being kufr, he says, Ibn Taymiyyah says, if al is put before kufr, this means that this is kufr akbar. So this ayah means kufr akbar. Look at this tadlis and kadhib. If you look at what Ibn Taymiyyah says himself, there are 2 places where he says under this ayah, it is kufr duna kufr. He says in Majmu' al-Fatawa, the first one, he quotes Imam Ahmed in saying this is kufr that does not remove you from Islam. the person who does istihlal. This ayah refers to the person who did istihlal of whatever he's doing hukm of. So he says, this is halal in the deen, and if I do this, I will not be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, saying khamr is halal. It is different from, for example, if you own a shop or if you're a ruler or whatever it may be, and you allow people that you have authority over to sell khamr. This is not istihlal. This is a major sin, and takfiring over this is the way of the Khawarij, making takfir over this sin. So allowing it in your country, or allowing it, whatever authority you may have over people, allowing it to happen is a major sin, and it does not remove you from Islam. And until the person does istihlal, as Ibn Taymiyah said, and this is the ijma' of the ulama. In fact, the scholars, they say whoever makes takfir on the one who just simply by making mistakes or ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, they used to say those people Khawarij, Haruriyah. Anyone who says ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed is shirk, is a Khariji. Obviously referring, what they mean here is that they're referring to the people who are talking about just ruling in the dunyawi issues. This is kufr duna kufr. And of course, if they do istihlal or anything, or tabdeel, or they lie about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say this is part of their religion, or this is halal, this becomes kufr akbar. And even if they reach the level of doing istihlal, full on istihlal, saying drinking khamr is halal. There was a time of the Salaf, Ibn Taymiyah mentioned this in al-Rawd al-Bakri, he said some of the Salaf fell into istihlal and the Sahabah did not make takfir on him, while Umar radiallahu anhu was alive. This is in the time of the best generations. So what about now? Because they use that excuse that there are things that must be known by necessity and this and that. Well, this is the time where knowledge was most widespread and one of the best generations. So if they are able to be excused for something like this based on ta'wil and some ignorance, you may say, then what about nowadays when people fall into some certain mistakes out of ignorance? And making takfir on people is for the scholars, as Sheikh Abdul Latif al-Najdi said. When it comes to individuals who say the shahada for particular things, he listed, like ruling by other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed and uniting with the disbelievers and so on. This is for the scholars. And you know what else he said? Uniting against the Muslims with the kuffar is kufr if they did it with the niyyah of trying to destroy Islam, or it depends on their qalb. That's what he said. If they did it for a religious reason, not for a dunyawi reason. And this is what Shaykh Abdul Latif al-Najdi said in the same kitab when he was trying to refute the Khawarij. He mentioned this. So this is why when it comes to these specific matters, when it comes to ruling by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on, it is for the ulama. Because when you look at the juhal, the way they apply these rules is completely incorrect, which is exactly why it's for the scholars. They'll say something is unity of religions, which is not what clearly by the speech of that person or that ruler, it may not been what he meant. Or when they do when, for example, they consider trading with the disbelievers to be uniting with them against the Muslims, it's ajib. So when you see them completely wrong and trying to apply these rules, you'll understand why he said this, because this is a dangerous matter. It's not something simple that takfir may return to him. So do not be fooled by those pretending to follow the scholars. They pretend they're with the scholars, but they don't care about them. They don't care about Shaykh Fawzan. Why do you think they quoted Shaykh Fawzan? They don't follow him. They make takfir on him privately and some of them publicly. Why would they quote him if they don't follow him? Do you think they quoted him to follow the truth, or because it's easier to manipulate Ahl Sunnah by using Shaykh Fawzan, and it's a lot easier to manipulate and remove the people from Salafiyah to join their hizb using Shaykh Fawzan? What do you think their reasoning behind using Shaykh Fawzan is? These Khawarij are deceivers, Dajajila, liars. Look at how they use Ibn Taymiyah. Look at how Sulaiman al-Alwan used Ibn Taymiyah to say that the ayah, whoever rules by other than Allah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down is a kafir. Look how he used Ibn Taymiyah to say this is kufr akbar. He says, and this refers to Kufr Akbar, which none of the Salaf ever said. Look how he used Ibn Taymiyah for this when he himself says this ayah refers to Istihlal. He says this ayah does not remove you from Islam. He quoted Imam Ahmed saying that the meaning of this does not remove you from Islam. It's not kufr that removes you from Islam. Look how deceptive they are in misusing the statements of the scholars. If he wanted to really follow Ibn Taymiyah, if he wasn't a kadhab, if he wanted to follow Ibn Taymiyah, he would just quote Ibn Taymiyah what he said under the ayah specifically, instead of taking another issue and applying it here. Just like the rest of the Khawarij do today, instead of taking what the scholars said about those rulers specifically, instead of seeing what they said, they refer to general issues, matters that are outside of the topic, and use that to make takfir on the rulers instead. Allah al-Musta'an. And another ta'wil that they use when you bring up kufr duna kufr, and what the imma have said is that they say that this kufr duna kufr applies to when you're judging over one person. So if you're judging, for an example, over one guy, maybe he's a family member, maybe you cut him some slack, maybe you don't really rule by the Shariah over him because maybe he did something terrible that results in terrible consequences. You want to cut him some slack, so you let him off easy and you don't fully rule by the Shariah over him. They say this is when kufr duna kufr applies, and it's not for ruling over a country. So what did Imam Ahmed say? When you say something, you must have an imam in saying so, or it's wrong and it's a bid'ah. He did not mention that part, that it's a bid'ah, but that's what it means truly. If you mention something that no imam has ever mentioned before, this is new to the Islam, this is new to the religion. And this statement does not come from the Salaf, none of the A'imah. And their excuse is, those Salaf have never seen someone rule over a country with laws other than the Quran. So did Ibn Abbas, when he mentioned this tafsir, has he seen, and he was under the Sahabah who ruled over the land, has he seen someone judge a person this way? Did they see kufr duna kufr from the Prophet ﷺ or Abu Bakr or Umar radiallahu anhuma? Did he see kufr from them, kufr duna kufr? Is that why they quoted this? Because it is not a necessity. This argument is ridiculous because it is not a necessity for sin to have happened for something to be revealed about it. If you were to look at Ibn Taymiyah, do you think that no one has ever fell into this mistake until Ibn Taymiyah's time? Because Ibn Taymiyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, all his Ibn Taymiyah students, none of them mentioned this qaida that they mentioned, that kufr duna kufr applies to when a person is judging over an individual, not over a country. And another issue is that if this was true, Sheikh Ibn Baz would have said this, or one of the A'imma of this time would have mentioned this. And if you look at the A'imma of the Salaf, none of them have even used this ayah to make takfir on the rulers, or to call them tawaghit. So when you look at the ayah, the way the Khawarij use it, it does not resemble the Salaf and Ahl Sunnah and the Imams at all. Rather, it resembles the Khawarij of the Salaf, who used to use this ayah to make takfir on the rulers. Just like I quoted before, all those A'imma, al-Ajurri and Ibn Abd al-Barr, these Khawarij used to use these ayat to make takfir on the rulers. Allah al-Musta'an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the Muslims from these Khawarij and their shubahat, saying that al-kufr means that it's kufr akbar because it has alif and a lam. Instead of taking what Ibn Taymiyah said somewhere else, use what he said under the ayah. If you wanted to follow Ibn Taymiyah, if you had that intention to follow Ibn Taymiyah and to spread his belief, you would have just quoted what he said under the ayah, directly on the issue, directly on the mas'ala. Now the issue of irja, this also needs to be covered. And Ahmed Musa Jibril loves using that term, Murjia rejects. He uses this term all the time, and he applies the word murji to the wrong people, applies it to Ahl Sunnah, and he does not know what a murji is. He calls anyone who does not takfir the rulers alongside him, he calls them Murjia. Anyone who disagrees with him, or the Ulamah that disagree with him, he calls them Murjia. He doesn't call them Murjia with dalil. However, if you were to look at what the Salaf have said, like Imam Ahmed, many times, what he defined irja to be, or what a murji is, and if you look at what Imam as-Sunnah al-Barbahari, what he said, whoever says that Iman increases and decreases, and that Iman is actions and statements, this person is free from all irja, from the beginning to the end of it. So if we have these statements from the Salaf, and Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he was asked, are you a murji? He said, I say that Iman is actions and speech. How can I be a murji? Yani it's impossible to be a murji if you say actions is a part of Iman. So if it's impossible for a person who says actions are a part of Iman to be a murji, how did they come up with this idea or statement that we are Murjia? We are Murjia rejects. And he even said we are worse than all the Murjia of the Salaf, even though we don't have any of the usul at all. We don't share anything. And those Murjia, they did not take actions to be a part of Iman. And most of whom he calls Madakhila and Murjia today make takfir on tarak as-salah. Whoever does not pray, they make a majority nowadays, they make takfir for those who do not pray. If this is the case, how did he come up with this idea that we're Murjia? Harb bin Ismail al-Kirmani, who used to deal with a lot of Khawarij in his time and area, he said that the Khawarij say that Ahlus Sunnah are Murjia, and he said they have lied. Rather, they're the Murjia. They don't say that Iman increases and decreases when we do commit sins. For example, the ruler, if he commits sins or makes mistakes in ruling, if he were to make any mistake and not rule by 100% Shariah, instead of saying this means that his Iman is little and it's naqis and he has some mistakes in his Iman, deficiencies in his Iman, they just remove him from Iman completely. So instead of saying Iman increases and decreases, they just throw him out of Iman. So because Ahmed Musa Jibril is a Khariji and his followers are Khawarij, it makes sense that they call us Murjia. As Harb bin Ismail al-Kirmani said, the Khawarij, they call us Ahl Sunnah Murjia. So if they don't have evidence and you see them calling us Murjia, it makes sense. And another issue that these Khawarij have is that they make takfir on the ulama, like Sheikh Fawzan and Sheikh al-Albani. And some of them, they say Ibn Uthaymeen had mistakes in Aqidah, and they insult the ulama of al-Sunnah, the imams of this time. And then they also use them to misguide others. So they insult them and then use them to misguide others. And this is some of the Khawarij. And to them we say, and there's a reason why I quoted these ulama, specifically these ulama in this video, because all the ulama we have today, anyone you want to mention, any talib al-ilm, they all either studied under these ulama or their students. Either one of them. So these are the roots of ilm that we have today. So anyone who discredits these ulama, anyone who insults these ulama, they have no real scholars in reality. They don't have ulama. They're juhal and ignorant. If you see someone discrediting these ulama, you know they don't have scholars, they just have their desires. The ulama of Ahl Sunnah, they say Sheikh al-Albani, Sheikh Fawzan, they're ulama of Ahl Sunnah, and they recommended taking from them and so on. And they used to praise them a lot, and they used to be their companions. But then the Khawarij say they're kuffar. There's a huge difference by how they describe these ulama. Could you honestly say, billah alaykum, that these Khawarij and Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the Shaykh Ibn Baz and the others are on the same manhaj when they have such a different opinion on the same person? One says Shaykh al-Albani is an Imam of Ahl Sunnah, a Muhaddith and so on, and they praise him heavily, versus someone who just says he's a kafir, mushrik. By taking some clips out of context, mathalan, one example would be how they said that Shaykh al-Albani does not make takfir on the one who insults Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the deen, when he has many recordings saying that if the person knows what he's saying, then without a doubt, the person who says that whoever insults Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or anything in the deen, then he is a kafir, and he said without a doubt. And this is available. This recording is available on YouTube. And the last issue is the issue of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyah making takfir on the Mongol rulers. They say that the reason he made takfir, and they use this as evidence, the reason that he made takfir on them is because they ruled over the country with something besides what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. But Sheikh Fawzan was asked about this, and he said the reason he made takfir on them is because the Mongols mixed Islam with their previous religion, and they didn't disbelieve in their previous religion. And when you accept Islam, it is obligatory to disbelieve in the taghut you believed in before. And they didn't do this, and they ruled by this law, and they believed it to be the truth alongside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they made a taghut with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They made someone equal to Allah, which is shirk. So this is why they were disbelievers, kuffar, and they're Mongols. Aslan, they weren't Muslims. So whenever they use this as evidence, it's a weak evidence. And it goes back to Istihlal. This is why the ulama, they said that ruling by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed has different categories, and it is only kufr and shirk if they associate with Allah someone by saying that that person's rule is equal to Allah's or better than, or that this is part of the deen. They did Tabdeel or Istihlal, real Tabdeel and Istihlal. This is when it becomes Kufr Akbar. And this is the way of the ulama. So when they're speaking about these matters, and they say they ruled by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, so they're kuffar, this that means they did istihlal. And if they said they were Muslim and made the mistake of ruling by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, then that means they're referring to a sin. So it's different categories as all the ulama have ijma' on.